kind of did what he was supposed to do, I feel like, in the top 8 to advance here. And you think that he might even have more of an advantage. You know, he's teched for the mirror match, and you just are you betting that Justin's going to take this one down?
Yeah, I feel like Justin has the answers for the mirror. He already, played it obviously in top 8, so he should have some sort of a game plan, but Lucas is going to do everything he can to stop that, wants to find the win himself. Looking at the prizes, Lucas does prize his A-Spec and that second Trevenant and Dustnor, which could be problematic, and Justin does prize a 1/1 Melodic line.
And we saw that Milotic line being so important for the kind of just the strategy of this deck to actually work with the kind of Ace Trainer Melodic combo. So not having access to that at least once can be really backbreaking.
So I think a big factor here is going to be which player is going first. And if it is Justin, is he able to find that Bide Barricade Wobbuffet and get it to the active spot? Looks like Justin has drawn for turn, so it will be his turn moving first.
Yeah, and remember, no supporter on the first turn under the new rules, so he just has that Phoebus in the active position. Battle Compressor now a really common play. Again, Battle Compressor just such a strong, powerful card and expanded, and we do see that Wobbuffet on the bottom of the deck there.
Yeah, something he'll want to try to find as quick as he can. Right away, getting rid of that Execute with Propagation. We saw him do this in top 8 as well. Every time he played a Compressor at the start of the game, this is one of his first discards.
Yeah, Execute just kind of meant to be in the discard pile. A card that can kind of make your costs of cards cost less. Things like Ultra Ball, Quick Ball. Just that's one of the big things about Expanded is that you can just push the power of those sort of cards even harder when you don't have to constantly be discarding actual resources.
Something potentially worrisome on Justin's side is that he did start his Phoebus, and we know the other one is in his prize cards. He does have Ditto Prism Star, and he does have a copy of Rescue Stretcher in his list, but losing this to a turn 1 Horror House into a turn 2 Night Watch from Lucas could be pretty tough.
And we do see a couple of supporters join the Execute from the Battle Compressor. That Ace Trainer, of course, really important to the combo. You'll see that in Expanded too because of the access to Versus Seeker. As we see, Justin attaches a Psychic Energy, and now is going to play an A-Spec of his own in Computer Search.
Able to find that, and does get that energy onto Phoebus, so we could see a Wobbuffet moved into on this first turn, exactly what Justin wants to do.
Yeah, just protecting the Phoebus, throwing the Wobbuffet, saying, I know you don't have access to this. I'm going to kind of slow the game down a bit, turn off your abilities. Exactly where Justin wants to be, and it's just going to show the power of having prepared for this matchup.
Looks like he grabbed a Shaman here off of Computer Search. Wants to find Wobbuffet, but needs more cards first.
Yeah, with so much access to cards like Quick Ball and Ultra Ball, the Shaman is going to put you in a position to have drawn more cards in addition to what you need. Of course, there is some risk there with the Shaman, but you'd have to be so unlucky not to be able to find the Wobbuffet throughout your turn.
And as we see, Quick Ball is able to discard that Execute right away, and Wobbuffet is the card that Justin grabs. This is really going to be on Lucas to kind of be able to have a response.
Yeah, it seems like Justin has a lot going on here. He has the Ultra Ball. He has a full hand off of that Shaman. So not only is he going to be able to set up this Wobbuffet, but he has, access to whatever else he's going to need throughout this turn.
Yeah, absolutely. With Ultra Ball in hand, the turn is certainly not over yet. And also has Gengar and Mimikyu tag team. And yeah,
due to the power of that Execute, is able to play out basically his entire hand, just having to leave one card to discard. Now we're going to see a Shaman for the full 6.
Yeah, and this is a situation I think a lot of players, you have an empty hand and you could grab Shaman or Dedenne. People might wonder which one should you grab, and grabbing Shaman is definitely a correct move here because you're drawing the full 6, whereas Dedenne later on could still draw you 6 even if you're left with cards in hand.
Speaking of the Dedenne, it does appear in Justin's hand there, along with the Ditto Prism Star.
Ooh, Ditto's definitely a good find with one of those Phoebus prized, and also can give him the option to find that Garbotoxin Garbodor, which I think is a pretty big key factor in the matchup when your opponent doesn't play it.
There's the namesake of the deck in the Trevenant and Dustnor GX. Justin just filling his bench, considering if he wants to commit the Ditto Prism Star. Turns out, looks like he does.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Go ahead and get it down. Give yourself the option if, you do get Horror Housed into Guzma Knockout on something like Phoebus, you want to have the Ditto Prism Star as an option.
Second copy of the Tag Team GX looks like it's going to go into the discard pile through Battle Compressor. And then now we're at the point where the Battle Compressor, besides maybe hitting energy, is just going to find things that Justin doesn't really want to draw.
Yeah, I mean, if you're new to the game, something like Battle Compressor might seem counterintuitive, right? Discarding 3 cards from your deck, that can't be good, right? But realistically, just lets you thin your deck out of cards that you don't need to see anymore the rest of the game. Getting rid of these pieces that you don't want to draw off of an N, you don't want to draw off of your own Shaman setup or Dede change from the Dene. Just increasing your odds, you'll find more good, useful cards through the rest of the game.
There's a weakness policy, again, another way to just kind of get rid of a card before the Dedenne comes into play. Justin just going through his deck.
What an insane turn here from Justin. No supporter played, no problem. Seeing 2 full uses of setup and a day change to draw even more cards. And he finds another Battle Compressor, could thin the deck even more if he wanted to. Also has Floatstone for Wobbuffet. That's a key piece.
Yeah, we just see the retreat of the Phoebus there, leaving the Wobbuffet up and a pass of the turn. Now, Lucas, of course, will have access to supporters, but abilities are going to be a lot harder for him here with that Wobbuffet in the active position.
And this is tough, too, because he has things like Dedenne and like Shaman that just are not useful to him right now.
You see an Ultra Ball as Lucas's first play of the turn. Looks like he's going to go ahead and get rid of that Dedenne, knowing that he can't use it to great effect here with the Wobbuffet in the active spot, of course.
Yeah, I mean,
go through things a lot slower than Justin, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we might even just see a collect here on turn 1 from Lucas. Like,
we've seen a lot of collects in this tournament so far.
We absolutely
way above expectation on collects.
Yeah, and honestly, that's a kind of a key choice. There's several Alolan Grimers you could choose to play in your deck list, and a lot of players opting for this collect. Alolan Grimer, of course, has a attack with 0 cost. You don't have to have any energy attached in order to use the collect, so it's kind of just a free 2 cards if you're stuck with it in the active spot.
Looks like Lucas is going to be able to put a little something together here. He does have the Phoebus in hand, and now he looks like he's going to resolve a quick ball, just deciding what to discard here. So even through the Wobbuffet, he is going to be able to get set up a bit. You're not going to see that big explosive turn like Justin had, not under Wobbuffet lock.
Something I think Lucas should be keeping in mind here, though, is his hand size. If he puts himself down to just 2 or 3 cards, he might make it to where Justin doesn't even need to prioritize using Ace Trainer right away, and Justin can use something like a Professor Sycamore in order to draw through more pieces of his deck.
Yeah, letting your opponent kind of get the lock up, as it were, with the Trevenant Dustnor without having to commit to the Ace Trainer can be really, really hazardous if they can just play their supporter to draw themselves cards, not have to worry about that piece of the puzzle, as it were, and just rip your hand apart.
All right, and we have just gotten an update on the other side of the bracket. The other top 8 match has concluded, and John Mustoy was able to take down Andrew Mahone. John will be the other top 4 player facing off against Colton Day.
So Andrew Mahone and his Snore Max deck, as it were, is not going to have a top 8 run. Great finish by him, but it looks like it's going to be all these kind of non-traditional decks in the top 4, showing really the difference between expanded and the standard format.
Lucas just forced to go for collect here, and now Justin can have a really big turn.
I mean, Justin just kind of has the world at his fingertips, right? What is he trying to pull off this turn, assuming that he just has everything he wants?
Yeah, well, I mean, he doesn't even have to necessarily go for the Gengar Mimikyu here. He could, if he finds the Melodic and has enough energies in the discard pile, could just pop that Energy Grace ability, go ahead and get that acceleration to Trevenant and Dusknoir, and use Ace Trainer to start getting rid of some of Lucas's options. And we do see the retreat of the Wobbuffet turning back on Propagation.
Yeah, the first step is going to be the retreat so that Justin can use his abilities of his own. Another great, effective Wobbuffet, especially with the Floatstone, as you mentioned last turn, is that he can just kind of control when that's active and not.
Yeah, and also moving into the Phoebus here, really great from Justin too. Once he uses Melodic's ability, that Pokemon is knocked out. You do have to promote a new active Pokemon, so you're only able to retreat once per turn in the Pokemon trading card game, but this kind of gives him a double retreat option.
Yeah, another way to move a Pokemon to the active spot, even if it's not through retreating. We do see an Ultra Ball, once again, Propagation coming into play here and discarding another energy card, the exact card that Justin wants to have in the discard pile.
And it does grab the Melodic. I feel like we'll be seeing that knocked out very soon, and if Justin has the Ace Trainer to follow it up, he's going to have a pretty tough lock on Lucas here right away. Also, if he could find something like the Alolan Muck to just further his setup and further the lock, that would put him in a good spot.
We do see those 3 energy cards in the discard pile. I don't know if I see a way to get the Ace Trainer. I know there's one in the discard pile of Justin, but there's a prize for Lucas, which is going to be actually turn out to be an unfortunate thing for him.
Yeah, not where you want to be going down on prizes right away. Seems like it would normally be good, but knowing that your opponent has that ace trainer ready to go.
And that shows you the power that this level of competition, and this with this sort of deck, there's just so many different things going on that taking prizes is how you win the game, but sometimes the timing of those can really, really matter, and that's what the Trevenant Dustnor deck is all about.
We do see Rescue Stretcher here. Gonna grab, I think just a little bit, yeah, Justin just kind of getting ahead of himself here, using Stretcher to grab Tapu Lele, to use Wonder Tag in order to search out this ace trainer. That gets him the piece he needs. Just gotta make sure we do those things in the right order.
Yeah, a little mis-sequencing there, but this is the combo, as it were. We have the ace trainer now. Lucas's hand is going to go to only 3 cards, of course, because he did take a knockout on that Milotic, even if he didn't attack it himself. And then that Trevenant and Dustnor is going to go ahead and leave with Lucas with only 1 card in hand at the end of this turn.
And I think the only thing Justin really wants in addition to, I mean, he's already in a great spot here, but the thing that would just put him in even better of a position would be finding that Garbotoxin Garbodor or a Alolan Muck, just furthering this lock.
Yeah, the Alolan Muck is a really important piece of the puzzle, because now the Quick Ball exists in the format. Of course, you have outs where you can draw a Quick Ball and then you top deck for your turn that card to use it with. But if you had that Alolan Muck out, you can't turn that into a Shaman, Dedenne, etc.
I guess he does draw the Garbodor, has Ultra Ball as well, so he could get the Muck out. But putting Garbodor in play with the weakness policy, he does choose to do it. But this could be, honestly, a little risky if Lucas does find a Guzma after Justin takes 2 knockouts. There's no switch targets for Justin to use with Guzma.
Right, it's going to be pretty hard for him to move that around. We did see 2 Skyfield, it looked like, got shuffled in.
Yep.
Cannot speak to what's in Lucas's hand, but those 2 Skyfields not going to do much. Going right back into the deck, Lucas left with 1 card.
I mean, the only thing he could really find here, I think that's an immediate out, is his 1 copy of In. He does not play Professor Sycamore. He finds a Shaman, but of course, Garbodor right here saying no setup today. No cards drawn for Lucas.
You have Shaman versus Seeker, not really a whole lot going on. You see, just considering just playing it to commit it to the board.
Yeah, and does go ahead and choose to do that. I mean, you don't get any value out of it, but you know that it's going to just get shuffled into the deck right away by another Night Watch. So getting yourself another Pokemon down is an okay spot. So
you may as well try to do something maybe with Sky Return or something in the future. It just doesn't matter. It's going to be shuffled in anyway.
Justin does go ahead and attach an energy to the Gengar and Mimikyu, so doesn't have enough energy left if he needed to manually retreat this Garbodor, actually. Oh, but he does play the 1 copy of Mallow and Lana, so that's a way he could switch if the Garbodor did get Guzma'd up so that he doesn't get stalled out of the game.
Of course. And now Lucas left with just 0 cards, drawing 1 off of the for the turn, and it's just a float stone. He's going to go ahead and concede.
Yeah, that's going to be it for game number 1. Lucas sees the writing on the wall, and that's exactly what Trevenant and Dustnor aims to do. Shut your opponent down on turn 1 with this Wobbuffet, make it so that they can't play any cards, and then pull off this massive combo with Energy Grace Melodic, and then use Night Watch to put those cards back and hope that those 2 cards your opponent are left with after they draw for turn are not going to help them.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially when you have all these different lock pieces, like the Alolan Muck, or we have the Garbodor that we talked about. It can just be you can just put your opponent in a position, especially if you get that combination off early, where they just don't really have outs. We saw the Shaman versus Seeker, but because of the Garbodor, it was just too. There was not any time to do anything. There was no options for Lucas. And Justin has now executed 3 games in a row. He's game playing exactly how he wants it.
Yeah, he beat Will 2-0 in top 8. Looking to do the same thing to Lucas here in the top 4 and cement his spot in the finals, where he'll be facing off against the winner of John and Colton on the other side of the bracket. But Lucas is going to do everything he can to make sure that that does not happen.
Yeah, of course, still a lot of Pokemon left here to play. Lucas, of course, hoping to rattle off 2 wins. So we saw that this is a mirror match. Of course, we saw that Justin has some things in his deck that are maybe shifting the percentages towards him a little bit. But what does Lucas need to go different here for him to actually take this win?
I mean, I wonder if there's a world where Lucas chooses to go second and goes for the Horror House play, but that just gets totally ruined if Justin is once again able to find Wobbuffet and get it active. So I don't know, it's really kind of a tough spot, and I love the adjustment from this group of players that brought this Garbodor and Wobbuffet inclusion of the deck. This is a deck that's been really popular in Japan the past few tournaments. Also, of course, Pablo Meza got top 8 with it in Dallas. The Garbodor and Wobbuffet, a big innovation on the list, and really, as we saw in that first game, makes a big difference.
I think that was is it Kenny Britton's list? Is
That's
that
right.
what we're hearing here? Looks like Kenny Britton was lost his winning in, but was able to supply the sauce, as it were, with a few of these players.
Absolutely. Justin and Will, of course, both making top 8. Another player in Isaiah Bradner did lose his winning in. So, I mean, the list was obviously very solid and had lots of players finding success with it.
So we do see Lucas is going first here. Opens with that Gengar and Mimikyu GX. First play will be a Battle Compressor. You'll see that a lot through these decks. Battle Compressor is just one of the most powerful cards and the thing you really want to search your deck with early and kind of determine how the rest of your turn is going to go.
Yeah, and I think here Lucas wants to have a really explosive turn using lots of Shamans, lots of Dedenes, get through as much of his deck as possible. He knows Justin is going to probably be aiming to go for the Horror House GX on his first turn, so you know, Justin's in a position where he can still pull off the combo before Lucas is really able to do anything. So what Lucas can do best here is thin his deck as much as possible and make sure that all of his top deck outs are going to be live. And he's doing a great job of that right now by going ahead and getting rid of this Professor Sycamore.
Yeah, Professor Sycamore in the discard pile of the Battle Compressor. Of course, there's an energy committed to the Gengar Mimikyu. Remember, no supporters allowed to be played.
Oh, he doesn't have a very good hand.
Just a bunch of Sky Fields, it looks like, and he has to pass the turn back.
Oh, that is not what Lucas wanted to see, and Justin already a much better start. Ultra Ball means that he has the Dene options, he's got Shaman options. Way, way better on Justin's side.
Yeah, we could just see Justin actually just have another big explosive turn here. Lucas did get to go first, but didn't really make much of it. He couldn't really do a whole lot. And now we might just see, again, with that Ultra Ball, with these different search cards, we might just see a big, you know, multiple Shaman to Dene turn out of Justin.
Yeah, and if Justin can find his own Gengar and Mimikyu GX, I mean, there's potential for Justin to win the game in just 3 turns. Using Horror House GX, Lucas can't play any cards. Then Justin pulls off the strategy by knocking out the Melodic, getting those energies on the Trevenant and Dusknoir. Ace Trainer, put your opponent to just 1 card in hand. If Lucas doesn't find anything on that 1 card after the 150 damage hit, the game will be effectively over on the next turn, and Justin will move on to the finals.
And so we've seen Justin just kind of masterfully execute. He's had a lot of great starts. His list seems really solid. He's just had a great time of just taking his opponent's hand apart, you know, kind of playing a control game and then just putting them in a position where maybe they're not literally 0% to win, but they're as close to it as they possibly can be.
Yeah, it's not a perfect lock by any means. We've seen some perfect lock decks in the past, and this one is not one of those. And I think Lucas, you know, made a heads-up play by getting rid of the Professor Sycamore, like we said, because now those VS Seekers will be live outs.
It looks like we're going to see a Skyfield and then a Dedenne. The day change, of course. A full, fresh reset for Justin. We see a Shaman in the hand as well, so we're going to see a lot more. First, we're going to see a Quick Ball.
Yeah, honestly, great here from Justin. Able to discard that Mallow and Lana. Gets that in the discard potentially for later, but is ultimately just going to be looking to thin the hand down to draw more cards with Shaman EX's setup.
Yeah, taking a look at what he wants to get with the Quick Ball, it is going to be the Phoebus, a really intricate part of the strategy. Of course, we can't really do it. You can't really pull it off without, you know, the Milotic accelerating the energy and then, of course, turning on the Ace Trainer. So still a lot more to go here from Justin. We see a setup going to be for 4 fresh cards. Another Quick Ball is drawn.
Oh, and those are the 2 last cards he drew. Those are the 2 last pieces he needed of the puzzle. Energy plus Floatstone, a way to move Ditto Prism Star and get this attachment to the Gengar Mimikyu. And I believe he's still got another Shaman in hand.
Yep, so just as you said, we see the Floatstone immediately get attached to the Ditto. Energy immediately on the Gengar and Mimikyu. Looks like he's considering if he wants to play out his hand anymore. He does have another Shaman, of course.
I think the only thing really missing for Justin here is the fact that he hasn't found a way to discard too many Psychic Energies yet, which is what he'll want to do on the next turn. There's another one drawn, and he does have Quick Ball.
Yes, he does have an out to discard there. It looks like that's what Justin's thinking about here. You can see the body language in the hand just kind of counting up. Okay, what do I want to do? Looks like he's going to go ahead and commit the retreat first.
He doesn't quite have everything he needs here, honestly. He's also missing the Trevenant and Dusknoir, so a pretty solid turn 1 from Justin, but definitely not perfect.
And we do see that GX marker flipped, of course, that Horror House GX used. Now, no cards can be played on Lucas's side.
Now, I wonder here, yeah, it looks like it. Lucas not able to play any cards, but still can attack. He uses his own Horror House GX.
And just effectively restarting things for everyone. You see Justin just draws and passes right back, and now we're in a position where it's Lucas's turn again. He can play cards, and not really that big of a deal from Lucas there. Just having, he does use up the GX attack, but that's about it.
Yeah, and he can burn some cards here to draw with the Shaman EX in his hand. Field Blower gets rid of the Stadium and Tool card in play, can replace the Stadium right away with his own Skyfield. Normally, after you use Horror House, you're looking to have a really great turn where you utilize Melodic, you go ahead and get some more energies in play, but not an option since the Phoebus just came down this turn. And maybe we could see him even just go for like a Poltergeist.
Yeah, it is kind of awkward when you use that big GX attack and then have to kind of, that was your second turn of the game in which you didn't get to do anything else. So you're still behind a turn here, but Lucas does refill his hand with that Shaman and has a lot of turn left to play.
Trainer's Mail looking at the top 4 cards. Does find an Ultra Ball. This could find him, something like the Trevenant and Dusknoir, or even get him ready for a Melodic on the next turn. I don't think Justin has too many trainers in his hand, so I don't think Poltergeist would do too much damage. But even if you're just doing, if you find 2 trainers there and do 100, that sets it up to be knocked out by Trevenant and Dusknoir later on. Yeah,
sure. Chip damage can be really important. If players are playing a game where the lock isn't going to be established and early, where you're going to just have to attack, you're not going to be taking big one hits, but you can definitely chip in and kind of wear down these big tag team Pokemon.
So another Ultra Ball here. Probably going to find a Shaman EX or a Dedenne, just really wanting to draw more cards. I think probably the best option here is going to be using Poltergeist, just getting some of that damage in play. Not realistic to attack with anything else, so that might as well be your play.
Yeah, we're going to see that Shaman come down and again just, fill the resources, get Lucas through his deck, and he's in a much better position than he was in Game 1, that's for sure.
Oh, yep, he's gotten to play cards this game, so that's definitely a plus. I think we literally saw 2 cards hit the discard pile before Lucas Justin started taking KOs.
Yeah, so getting his hand torn apart, not much he could do. So he's at least playing in this game. And again, the Horror House on his side did shut down Justin for a turn. So things are kind of back to parity. Grabbing
another Phoebus here is a really heads-up move. He knows that Justin can kind of pop off and maybe get some sort of Guzma play onto a Phoebus to take out the only option for a Melodic. Also doesn't know maybe if Justin has something like Counter Catcher. Lucas is playing that in his list, and that was something that was kind of standard previous to this tournament. We, of course, know that Justin does not have that option, but wise to play around that just in case.
Absolutely. You can only, use the information that you have. Lucas proving why he's here, of course, in these semifinals. Out of just over 600 players, I believe, just these 4 remain, and Lucas is, fighting back. He's down a game, hoping he can rattle off 2 and advance to the finals.
Lucas does not find an energy here quite yet. He can still dig with a Dedenne.
It's like Pokemon Communication is going to put the Milotic back in the deck. Definitely don't want to have to discard that if you don't have to.
Yeah, and I think this kind of signals that we'll probably be seeing the Deadeye change here, digging for either an energy attachment or maybe just something else you want to put up in the active spot. Maybe even something like Grimer collecting this turn wouldn't be terrible.
So Pokemon Communication is going to find a Shaman EX. So again, we are back into a world of just multiple Shamans, maybe a Dedenne, just drawing so many cards going through your deck. Trying to assemble the pieces that you need.
Yep. Quick Ball is going to ditch the Skyfield here. We, of course, see the other Skyfield already in play, and both of these players, that is the only Stadium that either of them has. And since Lucas has already used his Field Blower and Justin doesn't play one, that's going to stick in play the rest of the game.
Yeah, the actual, literal dead cards just cannot even be played anymore in the game. So want to get rid of those as quickly as possible. We do see, so we're going to set up for another Shaman, not before the Trevenant and Dusknoir hits the board, of course, thinning out the hand.
Yep, and doing this before using the Dedenne in hand means that he'll see way more cards here than maybe he would have otherwise. I think he's looking for an energy here. Oh, he draws both of his Melodic.
A really awkward position to be in. We saw that he communicated one back before because we said he didn't want to discard it off the Deadeye change. Now he has both in his hand, and that's going to slow him way, way down.
Yeah, a big difference here in the lists as well is the fact that Justin plays Rescue Stretcher, whereas Lucas does not. So if those Melodics hit the discard pile, he'll never have the option to Energy Grace.
And you can't overstate the importance of Melodic. You know, the acceleration is so important. The knockout, so the Ace Trainer is turned on, is so important. He just, I don't really think Lucas can afford to ditch them, can he?
I don't think so. Ooh, another tech card brought to the front potentially for Lucas was that Marnie, a new supporter card out of the Sword and Shield base set. Kind of a good way to limit your opponent's hand if you're tied on prizes potentially.
It's another kind of hand disruption card out of this deck. That's kind of the name of the game here in this mirror match.
The thing about Marnie as well, though, is, I mean, if that was the option he wanted to go for, is that he wouldn't be doing quite as much damage with a Poltergeist, potentially, depending on how many trainers, of course, Justin draws.
Right, of course, always a risk there. Lucas consulting the discard pile.
I don't believe he's played a supporter yet this turn. He does have an in hand, so that's a way he could draw some more cards without having to discard. Yeah, and that's what he's going to go for.
Yeah, so it does have that out of not having to keeping the train going, as it were, without having to get rid of the Milotics.
Yeah, and this actually, you know, maybe thinking that Justin could have been playing around a potential Poltergeist, you know, from previous turns, knowing that, you know, if he uses Horror House, his opponent's likely to use it, and then Poltergeist would be coming right away. So disrupting this hand actually could lead to more trainers and more damage done.
Yeah, it is a risk, but that's a good way to think about it. And especially if when you're Lucas, you just have to, again, you cannot give up those Milotics, but you just need to be able to draw more cards.
Oh, and Justin drew six trainers. So a Poltergeist, and Lucas did find a Psychic Energy. That'll be doing 300 damage.
Wow, well, the actual like worst you could possibly have been. We do see the energy committed to the Gengar and Mimikyu.
And this is a pretty big swing in this game. Justin, of course, definitely not going to be out of it by any means here. He can still, you know, pull off the Phoebus into Melodic, into Trevenant and Dusknoir play on this turn. I mean, losing this 3 prizes here is not great, but the trainers you have in your hand are very powerful for this next turn.
Yeah, again, we've talked a little bit about, it's not exactly applicable to this exact situation, but we talked a little bit about how the prizes don't really matter as much as the kind of disruption of locking you out of the game. So you definitely, this is not where Justin wants to be. He did not want to draw those 6, but again, at least after this knockout is taken, after the prizes go down, he has a way to kind of refuel in his hand. He's going to go ahead and show him
6.
All 6.
300 damage from Poltergeist. That's a knockout there from on the Gengar Mimikyu. And that's actually really kind of fortunate for Lucas that he was able to draw energy. As we look at his prizes there, he did prize 2 basic psychics.
Yeah, and he just picked them up off the prizes too. So they were, you know, it was a really good chance he would not have been able to find him here. And now we're going to see Justin back on his turn use those items that he had and hopefully put something together here. He's going to start things off with a Battle Compressor.
Yeah, this is almost a make or break it turn for Justin. He needs to pull off the lock here, knocking out the Melodic, and then getting those energies onto Trevenant and Dusknoir in order to start swinging with Night Watch. But Lucas being at 3 prize cards here after a Melodic gets knocked out, that'll put him down to 2. All Lucas would need is potentially a Guzma to clean up on one of these benched Shamans.
Yeah, we're at the point where, again, the lock is what matters in this matchup, but Lucas has kind of put himself in this position where things, the first few turns of the game did not go as either player really expected, and now Lucas can actually just win the old-fashioned way, and it can just come out of nowhere.
And I think this is something we'll see Justin kind of play around, knowing that Poltergeist is his opponent's immediate potential win condition. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him put 2 trainers in his hand or less.
And we do see that Milotic, of course, going to evolve in the active spot. Step 1 to kind of assembling everything that Justin needs here.
Only 2 psychics in the discard pile so far, so he will still need to find 1 more to pull off the attack this turn. Ultra Ball likely to find the Trevenant and Dusknoir here.
Taking advantage of that execute he put in the discard pile with the Battle Compressor. There's the big tag team. They go ahead and rescue Stretch back the Garbodor.
Yeah, and this actually would add even more to a lock here for Justin. Gonna go ahead and discard, knock out that Melodic, getting 2 energies on it, not quite the full 3. So it's really gonna come down to this Ace Trainer. Justin needs to find another energy card, and he'll actually be putting Lucas to 2 cards.
Yeah, so it's going to be 6 for Justin, Lucas for 2 for Lucas. This is kind of the power of doing this sort of thing early. Is now he's on 2 cards. Justin does need to find an energy, but if, of course, with only 2 cards in hand, he will only have the top card of his deck to save him. Unlike when you ace trainer and your opponent still has 1 in addition to the top deck.
Absolutely. Now both players presenting for the cut. Big 6 cards here from Justin. Needs to find an energy to stay in the game.
5 and 6 does not find one. He does have some other options.
He can still dig. He found a Shaman EX, so not over for him yet.
They're going to go ahead and thin his deck out again. This is another power of Battle Compressor here. He's saying, okay, I don't need this Muck. I'm not really worried about, or this Grimer rather, I'm not really worried about the Wobbuffet anymore. I just want to give myself the best chance to hit this energy because I need to stay in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. He has a Phoebus as well. He can throw down the bench. Of course, Skyfield increasing both players' benches to a total of 8.
It looks like the deck is pretty light there from Justin. Not too many cards left, but certainly not a guarantee.
3
4
cards.
fresh cards. Okay, there's the energy.
Finds 2 of them, so he'll be in a good spot here. And with the into 2 as opposed to Ace Trainer, Lucas will be left with no cards.
Yep, and we are going to see the next Battle Compressor come down and just say, Justin saying, okay, I have the attack this turn. I have kind of what I need, but now I just want to thin out more. I want to make sure that I have no bad cards left in my deck, or at least as few as possible before I execute this next step in my game plan.
Yep, not going to be using Weakness Policy here, not using Gengar and Mimikyu. Quick Ball, not super likely to be relevant. I wonder if he had the tool in his hand to combine with this and get even more of a lock. Yep.
And he does indeed. There's the Float Stone, there's the energy. Just 2 cards left. Those are going to be shuffled back in, Milotic and Versus Seeker.
And also, Justin, like we mentioned, did leave himself with just 2 trainers. So Lucas will not be able to just win off of a Guzma Poltergeist on to a Shaman EX.
Of course, stuff like that is just these kind of mistakes that Justin is not going to make. He's going to play tight every single time. Lucas, of course, a great player in his own right.
Yeah,
Once you get to this level of competition, that's just how it is.
I think Justin was playing with the OG Poltergeist Gengar, so he's definitely been playing around how many trainers he has in his hand for a long time.
Back in 2010.
Absolutely. Let's see. Trainer's Mail.
Okay, it is a Trainer's Mail. It is actually a playable card.
There's a VS Seeker. We know that he has that Professor Sycamore in the discard.
Wow, so he started this turn with 0 cards, top deck, one of the best that he could have, and now you see him immediately just confirming what he has left.
Yep. And
in the discard pile, and Versus Seeker is going to be what he takes.
That Compressor discarding that card early on in the game, paying off in big ways here for Lucas.
On the very first turn.
Yeah, and that really, small plays like that on the first turn that seem like they don't make a big deal really do make all the difference.
Absolutely. I see the cut from Justin. Versus Seeker immediately hits.
And, I mean, he does have a few supporter options, but I feel like his real only choice is going to be that Professor Sycamore.
Yeah, just got to maximize the number of cards you're drawing at this point. 7 fresh cards. Lucas is being very clear about what's happening, of course. Wow, started the turn with none, and now he played the best supporter he could, and now he's back up to 7.
Yep, one of the best top deck scenarios for sure. He does find the Melodic.
We're going to start things off with a Battle Compressor. Just again, trying to thin out the deck. We saw how important that Battle Compressor was in the very first turn, putting that Professor Sycamore, allowing for this play. And that's, at this level of competition, that's the thing you have to think about. What you did on the very first turn can pay off 3-4 turns later.
Big time.
That's exactly what happened. We're at the point now, again, where these Battle Compressors are less likely to contribute to great plays like that. It's more just kind of getting rid of the cards you don't want to see anymore. But still relevant, still have to think about the decision and make sure you're making the correct decisions throughout the entire game.
For sure. We do see another Compressor, Skyfield, which, like we said, is literally a dead card in this scenario. Definitely something he just wants to discard as quickly as possible.
The second Battle Compressor and the Skyfield both gone now.
I wonder if he could have discarded maybe the counter catcher there. He's pretty far ahead as far as the game state goes. He might not ever realistically have a chance to utilize that, but does leave himself that option.
Yeah, one of those things where you have to weigh kind of there's a 90% chance I'm not going to be able to use this. I don't think the game can realistically go this way, but is it worth it to kind of cut myself off of that option in case the worst does happen.
And of course, like you would just feel really bad, of course, if you did choose to discard that in this instance and it came up late game where you didn't have access to it and needed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Lucas has chosen, okay, is he saying, you know, that's just worth it to me. I'm just going to leave that there, even if it's not very likely to come up, as we see an energy attachment as well as an Alolan Grimer hit the bench.
All right, and let's see a Poltergeist. How many trainers does Justin have? It is just going to be 2, and that's actually really big because that means that a Night Watch is not going to be able to pick up, turn this into a 2-hit knockout.
Just going to go ahead and confirm what's in the hand. Of course, Justin being a sporting player.
Making sure that everything is as it should be.
Versus Seeker for the end again. Here's one thing that doesn't really change. You know, Justin is going to get a fresh hand of 6, and Lucas is going to be put down to 2, and we know, of course, that it's going to be put down to 0. So he, you know, he can draw out of it, but he only has. I mean, how many times can you realistically, you know, draw what you need off of having no cards in hand?
Yeah, and I mean, I think a big factor here is, of course, going to be the Garbotox and Garbodor over on Justin's side. We know that, you know, Lucas was not able to evolve either of these Phoebus into Melodics, and because Energy Grace is not active thanks to Garbotoxin, and I do believe that Lucas discarded his Field Blower already, using it on the first turn to draw more cards with Shaman.
Yeah, that indeed he did. So this Garbodor lock is going to stay up for a while, and of course, the Float Stone, the perfect tool to have on that Garbodor.
Justin just going to thin a Shaman EX out of the deck. He has a very, very thin deck, and this is kind of just what you see in Expanded. All these decks are so turbo, they draw through their resources so quickly, and Justin is taking a knockout here, moving down to just 3 prize cards, and both of the cards get shuffled back into the deck for Lucas. Can he top deck once again?
Yeah, we saw him do it last turn. We saw the Trainer's Mail turn into a very solid turn for him, but you have to remember too that every time that he does that, every time he draws a Trainer's Mail, takes a Verse Seeker out of his deck, plays a bunch of cards off the Sycamore that he drew, he is reducing his chances. He is getting rid of those powerful cards. I couldn't quite see what it was.
It's another Trainer's Mail! He's going to find 4 cards with this. Can he find VS Seeker once again? There's the Marnie. So that's a way he can draw some more cards. Computer Search obviously not going to be useful here since he doesn't have any other cards in hand, but Marnie will let him draw more cards.
Yeah, so there's the Marnie. So he has actually done a good job of drawing out of this every time. Marnie, not exactly as good as the Professor Sycamore, but
Sure.
Wow, he has just left so many resources in his deck that these top decks have just been great for him.
So both players will shuffle their hand. They get placed onto the bottom of the deck, and then Justin will draw 4 cards, Lucas getting 5.
Yeah, of course, the hands will be randomized. Then it looks like it's basically almost an entire switch. The deck just becomes Justin's hand, and what was his deck becomes his hand.
Yeah, he had thinned things down very well up to this point.
And looking at the hand of Lucas, he does have the Computer Search.
The Melodic there almost taunting Lucas. Like, he would love to be able to utilize this ability, but he just cannot. Of course, as long as there's a tool over here on Garbodor, Melodic will be shut down, even though Lucas did just choose to evolve it. And a 2 energy attachment onto Trevenant and Dusknoir, it's going to still be a few turns away from attacking.
We're going to see the second energy get committed there, and it looks like we're going for a retreat. Lucas just thinking about what he wants to retreat into. Alolan Grimer may be the option here.
Yeah, I do believe there's only like 2 cards in the hand right here for Lucas, so he knows a Night Watch is coming. Drawing 2 cards with Collect means that he'll have more options potentially moving forward.
Yeah, he's up to 5, but it's not going to matter. I mean, Justin's just going to keep, whether it's something like an Ace Trainer or just an end's the easiest, cleanest way to do it here. Just going to keep resetting that hand. Would be interested to see how many more Versus Seekers or Ends or things like that Justin has left, how many more times he can pull this off.
He's definitely pretty low.
But he doesn't really need to do it that many more times, fortunately, especially if we can get a turn where Lucas just doesn't have to worry about it, and the cards in Lucas's hand aren't great to start with.
A Computer Search and Melodic go back. Can Lucas draw a useful card here? Once again, he's done it twice in a row.
For the 3rd time in a row, can he do it?
I mean, I guess he just needs an energy here is the main thing. And he can start attacking on his own side. Let's see it.
Oh, I don't know. He's taking some time to think about it here. We see that Phoebus move into the active spot.
Yep, it looks like, yeah, it's an Ultra Ball.
Ultra Ball. So this is more so how Justin wants this kind of interaction to play out where it's just, you have one card in hand now, I don't
Here
even
we
have to worry
go.
about resetting it now. I'm just going to do this attack again and keep perpetually putting you on 0 cards.
Only 2 prizes left for Justin. If he had a Guzma here, he would have the option to just win the game by knocking out one of these Shaman EX on Lucas's side, but does not look like he has that since he has played a lot of VS Seekers.
Yep, so now again, 0 cards for Lucas. Justin Bokhari just one attack away, one knockout away from making the finals here in Collinsville. Lucas is very behind in this game. He has gotten the lock set up. Can he draw out of it for the 3rd time?
Let's see it. He needs an energy card here. And by the way he's spinning that card, it's not going to be helpful.
Looks like it was a Milotic. He's just going to have to retreat and pass the turn back.
This is all he can do at this point. Justin just 2 attacks away from winning the game. Does draw Professor Juniper.
Yeah, was consulting the number of cards left in his deck. Of course, I think he's just going to have to stick with Old Faithful here.
Yeah, Night Watch dealing 150 damage, and it will shuffle that 1 card back in for Lucas. And, I mean, even if Lucas top decks an energy at this point, I feel like this is going to go in Justin's favor.
I think there's very, very few ways that this can go wrong for Justin here with keeping Lucas on 1 card. It's not like he can draw energy and Guzma or something like that. Right. He just only has 1 card no matter what he does. And here's potentially the last card Lucas will draw in this series. This may be the end of his tournament.
There's actually a situation here where the counter catcher could have mattered. If Justin had drawn something like a Sycamore here, he could have found a energy plus a counter catcher to bring up a Shaman EX, which would have just won him the game. He's looking through his discard pile. I don't know if that card is alive out. He's checking the deck.
He's checking how many cards left. Look like something like 10 or 11.
Let's see it. He's got to be a Seeker. He needs to
Wow.
find counter catcher plus energy. He's down several energy cards. His deck is very thin, and it's going to be these 7 cards. If he finds those pieces, he will bring up a Shaman EX and win the game, and we'll be going to a game 3. Here comes 7 cards.
There's almost every card remaining in Lucas's deck. Wow, his draws have just been great. He's just going to go ahead and confirm that 7. Don't want to take any kind of penalty here.
Let's see it.
Computer search, but no energy.
Oh, he got computer search. Oh, are the last 2 cards energy plus counter catcher? He doesn't have a way to draw any more cards. Oh, wait, where's the counter catcher? Wait, is it in his hand?
I couldn't quite see what he had. He does computer search for the energy.
His hands are shaking. There's the counter catcher. He's got the energy in hand. Brings up Shaman EX, and energy will win him the game. Wow.
I believe it was the very, very last turn that Lucas had, the last opportunity that he had. He took it. He drew so well, left the counter catcher in his deck like we talked about.
Yeah.
And the top of his deck just was so favorable for him, and that has to feel so good on Lucas's side and feel so bad on Justin's side. We were talking about how few outs he had and just pulled it off.
Oh my gosh, I was talking about how he should have discarded the counter catcher, and it's such a good thing for him that he did not take my advice, kept it in the deck. That was his win condition there at the end of the game, and we're moving on to a game 3 here in top 4.
Wow, that's something we did not expect to see. Usually once the Gengar Mimikyu player, or sorry, the Trevenant Dusknoir player has that kind of lock established for so many turns. We kept saying how many times can he keep getting away with it? He draws the Trainer's Mail into the Versus Seeker over and over again, and on the very last kind of opportunity that he had, he did it. 1-1. We're now going into a game 3. One of these players will be making the finals here in Collinsville. We just have just over 30 minutes remaining in this match.
Yeah, plenty of time for this match to have a natural conclusion. Both of these decks generally set up their strategy relatively quickly, so I think moving into this last game, these players are just going to be looking to execute the same strategy they have seen. Big cards, of course, going to be that Wobbuffet on Justin's side, Garbotoxin, Garbodor as well, and if he can set those up and kind of limit Lucas's options.
Yeah, and we've seen just the first couple of turns of development matter so much here. Once a player does establish the lock, it seems like it should kind of, heavily favor that player. But as we saw, anything can happen. The top of your deck is still very live when you have cards like Versus Seeker and Professor Sycamores.
A tough choice here on Justin's side, still debating what he wants to start. He's got a Shaman EX and a Dedenne EX in his opening hand. Oh, and he prized the Wobbuffet.
Wow, so another huge advantage in Justin's deck building is not going to be available for him here in game 3. This could be huge.
Yeah, that's definitely the type of thing that could make all the difference here in a game 3. Justin, of course, did lose that game, and it looks like he did choose to go second here.
We're going to start things off with a Trainer's Mail here on Lucas's side. Shaman starts from both players. Trainer's Mail, a card that really saved Lucas in the last game, of course. Going to find
Big
a Battle
time.
Compressor for him here. Classic early plays of the Battle Compressor, of course. A lot of options in Lucas's hand. Looks like he has a pair of quick balls as well. So this is going to be a drawn out turn one. But of course, he will not be able to use a supporter card.
Yeah, Lucas also not playing that Execute, which we've seen Justin just utilize super well through all of his games this weekend. Kind of not a standard card in these decks. Coming into the weekend, but maybe after this tournament, as we move forward to Charlotte Regionals, which of course will still be in this same format, that might be an adjustment we see made from a lot of Trevenant and Dusknoir players.
Yeah, you start to see at a certain point where you have a deck, kind of archetype laid out, where you see the best players just making these small improvements that eventually become standard. Maybe they don't, but are just what they believed in. Can the small percentages can really add up and really matter.
Trainer's Mail, once again, kind of been the big card here for Lucas. I think a big factor kind of near the end of that game as well was the fact that Justin used so many VS Seekers. I mean, 3 turns in a row using VS Seeker in order to play an in against Lucas, which was great. Of course, it limited him to 0 cards in hand. Only his top deck was all he would have available to him. But it meant that he didn't have access to Guzma to close out the game near the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin had to rely on that. Just could not, you can't really have it all there. You kind of have to pick and choose, and of course you have to just keep the lock up. We're going to see the Lowland Grimer hit the bench here for Lucas before another quick ball comes down.
Yep, discarding another energy. You, of course, love attaching energies, but this is a deck, like we've seen so much this weekend so far, that you really want to get those energies down in the discard for Energy Grace.
Yeah, so reliant on that Milotic one huge piece of the puzzle. Another huge piece of the puzzle is a Shaman here. We've seen the best turns from each player on either side just have to be, multiple Shaman turns, maybe a Dede as well. Just drawing so much and, kind of going through so much of your deck. We saw the game end with only just a few cards left in deck for each player last game.
Lucas using setup for 4. He does have a quick ball, so we'll have the option to get down at Phoebus, which is a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, Phoebus is absolutely where he wants to be here. You need to be able to have that Milotic. We saw some awkwardness in his hands earlier, where in the last game where he had multiple Phoebus, multiple Milotic, could not evolve them. Maybe had to discard the Milotic, had to play a little bit different because of that, just showing how important Milotic is to the overall strategy.
Gonna go ahead and grab Gengar and Mimikyu, and this is actually kind of a key point from Lucas's list as well. Most of these decks do play 2 Gengar and Mimikyu, but Lucas only including 1 in his list. So he knows he has higher odds to draw into something like Phoebus or Ditto Prism Star or even Trevenant and Dusknoir. So going ahead to grab the 1 Gengar and Mimikyu makes him much more likely he'll get all of those pieces here on this turn.
We do see the Gengar Mimikyu hit the bench, and now we're going to see a Dede change. A couple of supporters looks like hitting the discard pile. 6 fresh cards.
Does get an energy to attach this turn. Also a compressor so he could thin some more pieces out.
Yeah, so this turn is not quite over yet. Yet another Battle Compressor. Needs to consult the discard pile, just make sure he has the proper amount of everything in there before he starts discarding what could be valuable resources for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We might see him discard a Sycamore once again. That was a big piece for him, being able to Trainer's Mail into those VS Seekers being live draws. Gonna also just discard some of these useless cards. Weakness Policy, of course, not gonna be a big deal.
It looks like some consulting there. Looks like there's going to be a Weakness Policy and 2 supporter cards, the Ace Trainer and the Mallow and Lana. Nope, just taking a look at the N as well. One of the really biggest differences between, as I'm sure you've seen if you've been watching this match, between the standard and expanded formats is the access to Versus Seeker and how important that can be.
Oh, makes such a big difference. It allows you to play one of tech supporters, things like Mallow and Lana, over in the standard format when, we see just so many different engines between the 2 formats, much more tag call over in standard where people can pull out, they're playing multiple Mallow and Lanas in their list. Here in Lucas's list and also Justin's, just having that 1 copy, they still have the option to use it multiple times thanks to Versus Seeker.
We're going to see a retreat of the Shaman there. Gengar and Mimikyu hitting the active spot. And after all that, Lucas is going to pass. Of course, no supporter, cannot attack.
Yeah, smart play, I think, here to just go ahead and retreat into the Gengar and Mimikyu. You want to give yourself the option to respond to Justin's Horror House with your own Horror House, exactly what we saw in that second game. And maybe doesn't quite have the information yet if Justin plays Field Blower or not. So that could be an option where Field Blower could get rid of this Floatstone on the Shaman, and then you wouldn't be able to respond with your own Horror House on the following turn.
Yeah, this is just kind of the safe conservative play of saying I want to be able to respond if things do end up going like last game.
Yeah, and Poltergeist ended up being a good attack for Lucas in that last game. So, I mean, as we know, it's something that can play a big factor.
And we've seen Lucas as something consistent. Again, Lucas is not a player who has played for years and years. He doesn't have a bunch of top 8s at regionals, but just through this match, we have seen him take the conservative plays. Of course, we spent a few minutes talking about that counter catcher and how he could discard it because the game probably won't go that way, but it's the safer thing to do to keep it in, and that's exactly the type of plays he's making here by retreating and just setting up this Gengar Mimic.
Yep, ended up playing out perfectly for Lucas to have that win condition still available to him. Finding exactly what he needs off of that one top deck card. Really just truly an exciting game in game number 2. But it's not over yet. Game 3, we will crown a winner in this one. And there is a lot on the line. Both of these players have already wrapped up a ton of championship points and prizes. I believe making it to the top 4 does guarantee you at least $1,500, but getting into second place is $2,500, and the winner of the whole tournament, becoming regional champion, will win $5,000.
And if you're watching from home and you haven't played these kind of high stakes tournaments, you may be thinking that it's a lot. You might be happy with the top 4, which no one can go away saying, oh, I did bad at regionals if you made top 4, got second or whatever. But in the moment, when you're there, when you're in the elimination rounds, all you want to do is win every match, and no matter how close you get, if you end up losing at any point, it's going to sting.
Really, really smart play here from Justin, using his supporter for the turn as a Guzma to bring up this Dedenne GX, looking to, of course, use Horror House GX on this turn. Meaning Lucas won't be able to respond with his own Horror House like we saw in game 2.
Yeah, just what we talked about. We saw Lucas make those plays in order to guarantee that, quote unquote guarantee, but we see the Guzma come down, and now Justin is able to just basically just say, okay, if I Horror House, I'm just going to kind of lock you out of your turn. And there's still more to do. Justin's still going through his turn. This is not all that he's going to do. Of course, his supporter for the turn is used up, but he is still building.
Yeah, there's so many ways to draw cards. Of course, he's got the Dedenne GX that he has already used, and 4 copies of Shaman EX. So lots of cards will be drawn still on this turn for Justin.
Floatstone on the Ditto. Looks like we're going to see a Skyfield before a Shaman for 5. I think Ultra Ball is the last card in Justin's hand.
Yeah, and a great card to leave yourself with as the last card. You can still thin your hand down on the other side of this setup and continue to draw cards with another Shaman EX.
Yep, and there is the Trevenant and Dusknoir filling the 5th slot of the bench, but of course that Skyfield means there's a lot more Pokemon that can be played down here. We do see that Ultra Ball coming down.
Yep, can draw more cards here with Shaman EX. I think also still looking for a Phoebus here. If he can get a Phoebus down and, get Melodic plus Garbodor on the following turn, he'll have that full lock that we've seen in the other 2 games.
Absolutely. We see Justin actually just not using the Execute, just choosing to discard 2 cards in his hand just to have less cards.
Yeah,
draw more cards off the Shaman.
Exactly. Lets him draw more cards here. Does go ahead and choose to put the Floatstone on to this Gengar and Mimikyu. That won't give him that option we saw in the first game where he hard retreated a couple of energies off in order to put them back in play with Melodic, but looks like he did draw an Ultra Ball.
Also using up a few of his Floatstones that we saw come into play on a Garbodor in the future, but of course there already is a Floatstone on that Ditto Prism Star. And here's a Phoebus. After all this turn, that is the first Phoebus that's going to hit the bench here. But again, a really important part of this strategy. And sometimes all you need is 1.
Yeah, generally games in the expanded format take less time as far as turns go, but end up taking more time than in standard because of how long these turns are. And we just kind of saw that play out for Justin here, where he pops off, plays a ton of support Pokemon, and uses Horror House. Lucas, unable to play a card, just has to pass it back over. And Justin now looking to set up that full combo with Melodic and even finding a Garbodor.
Yeah, Garbodor was the top deck, and now we see the Melodic. There's the prize for Lucas. Energies right onto Trevenant and Dusknoir.
So he needs just a few more things here. He's got the Ace Trainer in hand. He's got the Garbodor. One more piece really needed in order to solidify this lock.
So here we go. Here is the Ace Trainer. Of course, Lucas going to be put on 3 cards. Justin all the way up to 6.
Yep, has to find an energy here. It would feel really bad to do all of this and get the Garbotoxin lock, get the Melodic down, Ace Trainer your opponent to 3, and then miss a energy off of these 6 cards.
Yeah, typically you want to get in a position where you can use the Milotic for full value and get 3 energy, but it looks like
Oh, he whiffed.
he just missed.
He doesn't have it. He has an Ultra Ball in his hand, but by putting Garbotoxin in play, he cannot draw cards with Shaman.
And of course, he's going to commit the Phoebus to the bench, but it cannot evolve this turn.
I mean, I wonder if Justin could have not put the Garbodor in play and just played the Ace Trainer and tried to, wait and see if he got an Ultra Ball to continue to dig. But, I mean, that means that you have to find the Garbodor on the other side, and it's just going to have to be a pass.
Yeah, just as a pass. Wow, the luck of the draw here over these past 2 games has not really worked out for Justin here. He's setting himself up as well as he can, but has had to commit that Garbodor and then did not find the energy, could not keep going. And you even see when Justin passed, Lucas was like, oh, okay. Took a few seconds to really start his turn, believe what was happening after getting locked out last turn with a Horror House GX.
One thing, I mean, of course, Justin does still have going for him is the fact that Garbotoxin Garbodor is in play. So Lucas, of course, with no Phoebus, doesn't even have the option to Melodic, but moving forward in this game, won't have that option unless he finds his Field Blower, and then also can't use things like Setup.
Yeah, certainly not the end of the world for Justin. You just see, you just talked about, how every turn in Expanded is long and you're making lots of game actions, but the number of turns is relatively little. And what that means is that there's this amazing pressure on every turn to kind of execute what you're doing. And so Justin having to take a turn off, even though it was most of what he wanted, even though he ended with a Garbodor, is just not where he wanted to be. He's still very much in it. He's still ahead here, but you just want to get your maximum value out of every single turn.
And it looks like, it's actually going to be a collect. I thought we might see a Horror House here, but maybe Lucas wants to leave that Pale Moon GX option open to him.
And we did see some talk earlier before the top 8 started about how different players can approach the matchup around which GX attack they wanted to use. Of course, in Justin's top 8 match, we actually saw both players relying on the Horror House, but of course that Pale Moon is an option as well.
Yeah, Justin did use it in the first game of top 8, actually. So, he had the option to use both attacks, so both can work out for him in the matchup. But ever since then, it has been all Horror House GX on both fronts.
It doesn't seem like there's really a clean answer for the matchup specifically. It might just be where the game is, what's specifically happening within the game.
Ultra Ball does find another Melodic. Probably just thinning it out of the deck. Of course, can't use it because of Garbodor. And going to go ahead and bench Trevenant and Dusknoir and Ace Trainer once again. Oh, man, it would be so unfortunate for Justin to whiff here twice.
We're going to see the shuffle in. Here we go. 6 fresh cards.
And his deck is very, very thin. It's pretty low odds that he would miss an energy here, but it is probably still statistically possible. So really hoping to find an energy and get this lock off.
And here we go, just 3 cards for Lucas. We've seen Lucas with 2 of an energy from Justin, thankfully.
Oh, but the thing is there's a ton of trainers in his hand, and Lucas with 1 energy already on Gengar and Mimikyu. I think we'll probably see Justin try to play something like this Quick Ball in hand to thin his hand down. No, gonna choose to just take this knockout.
We're gonna go ahead and leave Lucas with only 1 card. Looks like the Catcher and the Vert Seeker are getting shuffled back in.
And I think that 1 card, I'm not positive, but I thought I saw 2 VS Seekers in his hand. So there's a chance that that Lucas will be able to draw out of this once again. And if he finds an energy card, Justin has 6 trainers in his hand, and he'll just take a 1-hit knockout with a Poltergeist.
Wow, we've seen this happen so much to Justin. Just the cards in either player's hand just not working out optimally for him, and that could continue to be the case as it is a Versus Seeker.
Communication, that's a fine thing to discard here. And we know that did he discard that Sycamore this game? He did.
Yeah, it looks like he did. He just passed over it. We'll also just looking through his discard pile, he does have an N as well.
Oh, man, and this is just, really tough for Justin. You got to give props to Lucas. He's thinned his deck very well, made it so that he has the highest odds possible to hit a supporter. And, man, you could see it on Justin's body language, like, oh, he hit again. And
once again.
Here we go. Sycamore, let's see if we can find an energy card. And, honestly, even at this point, with 6 cards exactly in Justin's hand, Poltergeist might not always be the correct option here. You would have to, of course, hit all 6 in order to get the knockout. But 1 is an energy, so it might be just short.
Yeah, it looks like 1 actually is an energy here.
He could even use Horror House GX here.
He has a ton of options. Just drawing the Versus Seeker kept him in this game. Still, of course, Garbodor is up. He can't do everything he wants to do, but he does have a ton of options. Looks like the second energy is getting committed to the Gengar and Mimikyu.
I mean, I think using Horror House GX here is generally going to be correct because with the extra energy attached, you actually force both players to draw until they have 7 cards in hand. So you'll increase as many cards as possible for Justin, and he won't be able to play any of them. Oh, just go for the Poltergeist, and that's 250 damage, 20 short of picking up this KO.
Yeah, choosing to leave that GX attack active. Of course, you only get to use 1 GX attack per game. Look at all those dice on Trevin and Dustnor, but not quite enough.
These things have so much HP, these tag team Pokemon.
That they do not quite enough, so maybe a little bit more of a risky play there, but does preserve rather the GX attack for later in the game.
Justin now with an energy could start powering up his own Gengar and Mimikyu. That's the thing that's closest to being able to attack. He does have a very thin deck, so has to keep all of those type of things in mind. And Ace Trainer not active right now for Justin. These players are tied at 5 prize cards apiece.
And of course, we won't be able to see him do the end tricks from before because Lucas is, again, 5 prize cards is not exactly how that works, although the end tricks will prevent him from decking if it comes down to that, which it looks like he has 4 or 5 cards left in his deck.
I mean, yeah, he's definitely in a situation where he's got to be mindful of not playing too many cards where he might risk decking himself out with something like an N.
Absolutely.
Could be eyeing up a Mallow and Lana here. It would heal 120 damage, but that would still mean that he gets knocked out by a Night Watch. Though he knows that Lucas is pretty far away from being able to pull that off. I mean, Lucas hasn't used his Field Blower yet. Justin does know that he plays it. We saw it in both Game 1 and 2. So if he finds Field Blower, he can definitely use Melodic and get a bunch of energies in play.
It looks like we do see a second energy committed to the Gengar and Mimikyu over on Justin's side now. Justin considering if he wants to play some of these items, what he wants to do. But it looks like he's just going to go ahead and attack. Shuffle, it looks like 4 cards left for Lucas.
No, just 3. Oh, no, it is. Yeah, it looks like it is 4. So he will be putting 2 back.
Oh, yeah, a little bit of awkwardness there.
Sleeves stuck together.
But yeah, nothing malicious there. We're just going to see those 2 cards shuffled back.
And does put back Guzma and VS Seeker. Actually, 2 pretty, potentially useful cards here for Lucas.
Yeah, leaving him with a Milo Tick and one other card. Didn't quite get a look at it, but we've seen the top of Lucas's deck be very, very helpful to him throughout this series. Can he pull it off again?
Yeah, let's see it. 2 cards in hand. Also wants to find that Field Blower. He's got a couple Melodics, and it is a Trainer's Mail
again.
That's been his card, hasn't it?
It absolutely has. Let's see what it finds him this time. There's another Versus Seeker. So if he needs to rebuild, he can. He's just drawn out of it once again.
Guys, Trevenant Dusknoir, there's no problem with this deck. All you have to do is draw Trainer's Mail and find VS Seeker.
Just make sure
Lucas is showing us how to beat the deck.
That he is. Of course, that Garbotoxin still online,
sure.
So Milotic will not be there to accelerate all the energy you see in Lucas's discard pile.
Yeah, gonna have to find Field Blower in combination with this. But if Lucas does, he'll actually be in a solid spot if he, retreats this Gengar and Mimikyu. We saw the Melodic in hand already, so he does have that evolution available. And if he finds Field Blower and gets Energy Grace off, he'll take a knockout on this 3 energy Trevenant and Dusknoir from Justin.
Yeah, in this turn, because the Phoebus has been in play, he can actually just evolve and then not use the ability and then play something like a Sycamore and not have to just discard them. So in a little bit better of a spot than he was before. But of course, we'll need to take Garbotoxin offline before any of that really matters.
Absolutely. Gonna find VS Seeker. Eyeing up a Mallow and Lana, potentially?
Yeah, it looks like that is going to be what he takes here.
Gonna just discard both Melodic.
He's gonna heal a bunch off of the Gengar, promote the Shaman now.
So he's committed. He's not using Melodic at all this game. And I mean, with only 20 HP left, there only needs to be 1 trainer from Justin. But I think, yeah, Lucas wants to take a look and make sure he's aware of all of these cards. The problem with this play is the fact that your only real attacker for the foreseeable future is going to be this Gengar and Mimikyu. Of course, it's not in danger of getting knocked out. It does have 240 HP, so 210 remaining. And that means that if this is his only attacker, Justin can kind of play around this Poltergeist.
Yeah, with Poltergeist being the only real attack left, it's easy enough. You can still get in positions where you just really can't play out all of your cards, of course, but not too difficult to make sure that you don't expose yourself to a big poltergeist.
I mean, I wonder if Justin's in. I mean, he does have Ultra Balls and stuff, so he shouldn't have too big of an issue playing his hand down. But I mean, the only attacker he has powered up right away is his own Gengar and Mimikyu, and Lucas went to 0 cards in hand before taking a prize. So there's just going to be those 3 prizes, and it's just a pass actually from Justin.
Yeah, we've seen this game. Both, game 2 was Justin sort of executing his strategy, but Lucas drawing out of it. Game 1, of course, was just kind of a slaughtering on one side. And Game 3, we've seen just be very non-traditional way of playing, way of this matchup playing out.
And this is actually, so Justin needs Lucas to knock out this Garbodor. That's what's locking Justin down. He doesn't have his own Field Blower in order to remove this tool to turn back on his abilities. So he needs this to go down in order to turn back on his own Melodic's Energy Grace so that he can accelerate more energies into play for Trevenant and Dusknoir.
Yeah, and that's what he's looking for. He just leaves the Garbodor in the active position saying, okay, take the knockout here. I need you to play into this for me, and it'll also turn on abilities on your side, of course. Ditto Prism Star hits the bench.
Yeah, and I think Lucas should go ahead and just play as many of these cards as possible since it's pretty likely that, Justin's going to be using Night Watch and shuffle these cards back in anyway.
We do see that Horror House GX happen here from Lucas's side. He does have the extra energy, so he will be drawing all the way up to 7 fresh cards.
And if Lucas can find a Guzma, this should be a game-winning play. Depending on how many trainers he just drew just now, if there are 5 in his hand, which it looks like there are, Justin's going to pick up the KO here with Poltergeist and take 3 prizes.
Well, it looks like that is the knockout here. 3 prizes for Justin that Shaman is going to hit the active spot. Justin just taking a moment to kind of look at the hand, see what exactly is going on here.
And now Lucas is the one that's on the back foot. He has no energies in play, no energy efficient attackers really left to him, and he's going to go ahead and scoop the game.
Extend the hand. Justin Bokhari makes the finals here in Collinsville after